Welcome everybody to our 6th Strawberry Seed webinar for 2022. I would like to particularly welcome all of our speech pathologists that are joining us tonight. This is the first of our 101 series that we're starting, where we're going to just really go more focused in on particular industries. So I'm joined tonight by Frances Orr, our principal HR consultant, and also our mental health first aid trainer, who is going to be delivering most of it tonight. I get to kind of just ride in the side saddle tonight with my wine. So I hope everybody else has their wine as well. Might as well get going, I think. Do you want to flick to the next one? So I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land in which we are presenting this today, and pay respect to their elders past, present and emerging. I am currently on the land of the Wadawurrung people, and we extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples that are here with us today. So for those that don't know us, we are Strawberry Seed Consulting. Here's some pictures of our lovely team. We've been around for over 9 years, coming up sort of closer to 10, and we specialise in providing HR consulting to small businesses right around Australia. And while we do work with multiple industries in all different areas, we do focus about 30 to 40% of our time in allied health, which is what's brought us today to being part of our first 101 series about speech pathology. So without further ado, I am going to pass over to Frances. Firstly, if you do have any questions as we go along, I ask that you put them in the question function. We have a Q&A box there. So please pop any questions in as we go along. And at the end, we are going to leave plenty of time to answer any questions that you may have. We received everybody's questions as part of registration, so we thank you all for providing those. And we will be answering as many of those as we can today. Obviously, we only have a certain amount of time, and we will try and address as many as possible, but please feel free to put any questions you have in the Q&A box, and at the end we will hang around and answer as many of those as we can. And now I'm going to hand over to Frances.
Thank you, Carly, and like Carly says, welcome to everyone, and welcome to the first session of 101 Employment. So the topics we're going to cover tonight: we're going to look at governance of employment, we're going to look through employment types and classifications, I'm going to touch on rates of pay and remuneration, which I can never say correctly, so apologies. I'm just going to say it right now to all the speech pathologists that I can't pronounce that word. Recruitment, IFAs, and we're going to touch on leave as well towards the end. So let's get started and delve into how employment is actually governed. So some of those might look familiar to you. Employment is actually governed in a couple of different ways. The one that you're probably most familiar with, or that you have most interaction with, is your contractual arrangement, so your employment agreement or your contract. So that is something that is quite often and should be given to all employees, and it's something that outlines the legal obligations that both parties have to adhere to. The contract in turn will be governed by the National Employment Standards and any applicable industrial instrument or award, as we like to call them. They can also be governed by enterprise agreements, which are titled EBAs. So it's good to know that employment contracts can never have any clauses as such that are less than what is stipulated in the industrial award or in the National Employment Standards. And if anything falls silent in any of those situations, it will default to the next stage or next element in that chart. The industrial instrument that's commonly applied to speech pathologists, as I'm sure you're all aware, is the Health Professionals and Support Services Award. Your employment agreements should absolutely specify what award you're under and what classification the employee is actually under. So let's have a quick look through employment types and classifications under the Health Professionals Award. Now, I'm sure most of you are aware that there is what we would call a permanent employment type. Now, this includes full-time and part-time employees. They are contractually bound to work a specific number of hours per week and are essentially entitled to paid leave accruals and entitlements. On the other hand, you've got your casual employment agreements, and these are slightly different. This type of employment does not guarantee or has no firm advance commitment of work, essentially. Quite often casuals will have very varied rosters and potentially little to no notice of when those shifts might be. They will always have a casual loading of 25%, and that's in lieu of payment of the paid sick leave benefits, of the paid entitlements. Casual workers can decline shifts if they choose, and very little to no notice needs to be given for termination. I've also noted on the bottom there the casual conversion. This has been implemented in the last couple of years and has changed slightly. So it's good to know that if you're an employer with under 15 employees, so a small business, you're under no obligation to actually offer casual conversion to your team members. If you're over 15 employees, then you should regularly be checking in with your regular and systematic tools if they would like to convert to permanent. Now, the last one on the bottom there is contractors, and I know a lot of you had questions around contractors versus employees. Contractors don't technically fall under employment. They're not an employee as such. So we don't tend to delve into that. It's not our field of expertise. There are some highlights that can sometimes differentiate between an employee and a contractor. But essentially a contractor runs and operates their own business. They have the right and capacity to work for other people. They would likely have an ABN and potentially could be registered for GST. They're likely to pay their own expenses and utilise their own equipment when providing services. And they possibly have their own separate place of work and is absolutely able to advertise their services to other people. So we're not going to delve too much into that today, I'm afraid, but we work with a fantastic commercial lawyer called Tanya White. She works at a business called Cross the T. More than happy to put the details if we have them to hand in the chat function or if anyone wants them afterwards. But absolutely, she'll be there if you'd like to contact her, to guide you through the differences of a contractor and potentially to draw up an agreement. But like I say, it's not the focus of today, unfortunately. So I'm going to revert back to employees, sorry. Oh my goodness, I should have had that, Jen. So let's have a quick look under the Health Professionals Award on how to classify your team members. So under the Health Professionals Award, there's two streams. There's the practitioners, which essentially would be your speech pathologists. So these are qualified people who obviously have undertaken training and degrees to be able to practice in their profession. And then you have a second stream, which is support staff. This obviously usually is your administration, reception, or admin team. Can include practice managers, and it can also include allied health practitioners as well. Sorry, not practitioners, allied health assistants. Oh my goodness. So there are two streams. Now, to classify under the award, when we look at practitioners, we essentially, and this is very basic, but we look at the qualification that they have. So whether it's a bachelor, a master's, PhD. We also then take into account the years of experience that they've had. This will then bring us out to a level that we know would be their classification level and pay point. We also look at the role that they're doing and the responsibilities that they bear in that role. The same with support staff. We can look at the experience and potentially the qualifications of that person, but we also look at the responsibilities of the role to gain a classification. So how to classify? All classifications under this award should progress through to the next pay point every year based on full-time hours or based on, I think it's 1,824 part-time hours per year. Progression, therefore, through to the next level is also based on annual hours, but it also depends on the responsibilities of the position and if that's meeting the requirements and the responsibility of the next level. So in essence, you may not have to move an employee through to the next level if they are not undertaking the responsibilities of that level. For more information on classifications and what they are actually about, you can check them out in clause 12 or under Schedule A under the classification definitions. And that's just a quick screen grab of them there for you to have a look through. So let's have a look at what specification ordinary hours and rates of pay are under the award. So the Health Professionals Award stipulates an ordinary span of hours. This can be found under clause 13.2. There are two separate spans. The first one is applicable to private medical, dental, pathology, physiotherapy, chiropractic, and osteopathic practices. These hours essentially are Monday to Friday between 7:30 a.m. and 9 p.m. and on Saturdays 8 a.m. till 4:30 p.m. The second span of hours is deemed to be between Monday to Friday 6 a.m. till 6 p.m. Now, the first span of hours is applicable to the industries mentioned there. So by that determination, all other industries or professions will fall under the Monday to Friday 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. ordinary span of hours. This may potentially vary if you're part of a multidisciplinary clinic, but we've had mixed advice on that of late. So I would certainly contact a trusted advisor or contact Fair Work directly if you had any questions or queries around that. So essentially what we take from that is that if you are running an independent, solely speech pathology clinic, your hours of work for an ordinary span of hours is going to be Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. till 6 p.m. So knowing that and knowing how to classify, we can have a quick look at the award rates. So again, this is just a screen grab of the pay guide, which absolutely you can access online. So this outlines each classification just down there on the left-hand side. So it starts with support services and moves through to health professionals. This screen grab is from the full-time and part-time classifications or employment types. It does also specify casuals separately. And you'll see along the top there that you'll get the different rates of pay. So you'll get a weekly rate, an hour, shift work, Saturday and Sunday rates. It's important to note, though, that these rates do not include superannuation and they do not include leave loading. So those two things need to be added on top. So now we know the ordinary hours, we need to know when penalty rates are implicated. So the Health Professional Award states that overtime penalty rates will apply when a full-time employee will work in excess of their ordinary hours, i.e. their 38 hours per week, or when they work in excess of 10 hours on any given shift. It's very similar for part-time employees. That's if they work in excess of their ordinary hours, except where potentially an agreement has been reached to change those ordinary hours, and or if they work in excess of 10 hours per shift, and or if they work in excess of an average of 38 hours per week, or in a fortnight, or across a 4-week period. So that would be when overtime rates apply. For casuals, again, it's very similar, if not the same, if they work in excess of 10 hours per shift, or if they work in excess of 38 hours per week, or the 76 hours in a fortnight. Overtime rates can also apply with casuals where an employee might be deprived of part of their break in between the shifts as required under the award. Now, when I'm talking about overtime rates, for permanent employees, we're looking at Monday to Saturday, 150% of the minimum award rate for the first 2 hours and 200% thereafter. Sunday time is 200% of the minimum award rate, and the wonderful public holidays that of course we're all waiting for tomorrow. If an employee works overtime on that day, they will be paid 250% of the minimum award rate. Casuals is slightly different in terms of award overtime penalties. First 2 hours is 187.5%, and 2 hours there, and after 2 hours is 250%. You cannot double dip, so you have to apply the penalty that is has the most provision for the employee. The Health Professionals Award also stipulates shift work penalties. So the definition of a shift worker was amended from July 1st, 2020, and did actually clarify the definition somewhat. So under the Health Professionals Award, the shift worker is an employee who has ordinary rostered hours of work that regularly finish essentially between 6 p.m. and 8 a.m. or commence between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. So essentially, if you had someone that worked from 12 noon till 7 p.m. on a regular basis, that would be a shift work. The penalty rates for shift work apply to the total hours in the shift. So it's not just from 6 p.m. till the finish time. It would be, in the instance that I've just given you, from 12 p.m. till 7 p.m. So the shift work penalty is 115% of the minimum hourly rate for permanent employees and 140% for the minimum hourly rate for casuals, minus the leave loading, casual loading, sorry. Shift work doesn't apply on weekends or public holidays, as the overtime penalties will apply in that instance. So I'll just give you a quick example of overtime and shift work penalties. So we've got lovely Jane. She's a part-time speech pathologist, and her regular shifts include Monday, 7 a.m. till 6 p.m, Wednesday, 12 till 7, Friday, 8 a.m. till 2 p.m, and on a Saturday, 8 a.m. till 12. So for this first shift there, Monday, 7 till 6, she would be paid overtime because she's working a shift over 10 hours. So the overtime rate only applies to the time after 10 hours. Wednesday would be a shift work penalty for all the hours from 12 till 7. Friday is ordinary hourly rate, huzzah! So she just gets paid her normal hourly rate. And Saturdays, 8 till 12, again would be overtime for all those hours, because Saturday is not in the ordinary span of hours for speech pathologists. So here comes my favourite section of the word I can't pronounce properly, so I'm just going to say it as I do. So remuneration. I changed the M to an N, so I do apologise. So remuneration is obviously very specific and very individual, and it absolutely can cover a lot of ground. So the big green. But for the purpose of this session, we'll take a quick overarching look at employee salary, benefits and retention. So when Strawberry Seed, for example, will look at an employee's salary, we can really only take under advisement the award and the relevant penalty rates that might apply to a person's hours that they work. So we can't technically take into consideration your location or their location, so metro versus regional, for example. We can't take into account the market value, so what salaries and what roles are being advertised in your local area. You can find that information out through Seek and Indeed if you needed to. And we can't take into account the current or trending incentives that you might have in your industry. We don't also take into account other people's EBAs or any state or public awards that might be applicable in your area. So that is how we judge salary. So we do get a lot of questions about people's remuneration, and it is a hard one because we can really only advise based on what the minimum award rates are. It's really important as employers to know the other things on that picture. What is effective in your area? Are you metro versus regional? Can you provide incentives? Is it the industry norm? What's the going market value? All those things can really be taken into consideration. What's also really important to note is when we're talking about salaries or remuneration, that any bonus commissions or any bonuses that you might pay should ideally be paid on top of or in addition to a base salary. because that base salary is their guaranteed earnings. So it's always really important to try and calculate that in addition to what they would earn under the award minimums. So as part of deciding what you may be able to offer a new candidate, or even to be reviewing an existing employee, you can do a couple of things. You can either look at the award rates and pay the minimum award rates for the hours the employee works, or you could calculate an inclusive or an above award rate for the hours that person works. So this is what we do in terms of a better off overall test. It essentially checks an employee's salary against the minimum award rates to see if that person is better off overall. These are really, really helpful exercises because it helps to confirm the employee's award classification. It checks and compares an employee's salary against the award minimums. So you know as a base what salary you can you need to pay someone. You're legally obliged to pay someone. Sometimes at a higher rate of pay, penalty rates, allowances and loadings may be inclusive. They're only inclusive if we do a benchmarking comparison and know that the outer limits of the employee's hours are included, and if this is then supported by a contractual offset clause. So it's good to know that if you are paying above award rates, that you know what hours, what penalty rates are included in that, if leave loading is included, and if you do have a contractual offset clause that stipulates that. So I've done just a really quick and sort of high level case study just to show the differences. So this is very simplistic and probably a little bit too so, but what we've done here is we've looked at a level 1 pay point 4 employee with a salary of $28.24 an hour. This is inclusive of leave loading. You'll see there that the first scenario is a full-time working week with 38 hours falling within the hours of 6 a.m. till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday. So you'll see there that the yearly salary there is $51,600, for example. If you take a look at the second scenario there, you'll see that it's the same weekly hours, so 38 hours in 1 week, but you've got one work shift of 8 hours and one Saturday of 4 hours. And you'll see that the total salary there is nearly $6,000 difference. So just to give you an indication, and as I say, it's quite a high level simplistic benchmarking, but it does make a difference, the penalty rates that apply. So it's really, really good to make sure that you do have this check in place for all your team. So some of the common salary mistakes that employers make would be incorrect classification at the start of employment, and potentially not maintaining classifications during someone's employment as well. And that would be in line with years of experience, hours worked, and qualifications and responsibilities. Another error can sometimes be changes to the employee's days or hours of work without the pay rates being adjusted, as you've just seen there. It does make a difference if you do different shifts. And the other thing that gets us every year is the minimum wage increases in July. And these are always, well, not always. During COVID, there was a funny 5 minutes there where they split them up and did what have you. But yeah, every year in July, the award rates will change. So we know when we work with well over 250 small businesses around Australia now, and when we have discovered that underpayments may be occurring, it's usually because employers don't know the awards and know the relevant penalties that need to be applied. Very rarely done maliciously. So if you do think that you have concerns around salary, talk to us, raise it with your employee, and work to rectify those issues as soon as possible, because we're all human at the end of the day. There is also the Fair Work website that has a pay calculator, and that can also help out if you have a quick question about what the relevant pay rates should be. So along with remuneration, retention, keeping hold of your existing wonderful team. It's imperative, and Carly's listed today quite aptly on the socials something about maintaining the team you've got. What I would say here is that it's such a good idea to talk to your team and find out what's important to them. It's never going to be a one-size-fits-all to make everyone happy and content in the workplace. Some people might prefer extra cash, brilliant. Some people might prefer additional annual leave per annum. Some people might want training and development. As I said, find out what makes people happy and roll with it. Other ideas, you can have other incentives, again, cash salary above and beyond award, commissions or bonuses. You could have work-life balance, flexible hours. Think outside the box. Could you pay for childcare 1 week in the year or in the month? Gym memberships, gift cards, entertainment vouchers. As I said, talk to the team. Along with culture and obviously your interactions and your relationships, there are obviously measurable ways to try and retain your team. Now, this little section is not one we usually cover, which is why I'm kind of grinning a little bit. But I would like to touch on it today because I know we had a few questions and queries from it. So if you're all still with me, what I'd like to do is do a quick poll. So what I'm going to ask, and I'm going to launch it now, and hopefully you can see that. So have any of you had to advertise and recruit in the past 6 to 12 months? Yes or no? And what was your experience like whilst recently recruiting? And the answers there are fantastic, had wonderful candidates, really responsive. So-so, had some good applicants, have hired someone, not sure it's going to work out. Absolutely shit, no one applied. Actually, no, someone did and they had no relevant experience. We're still trying to recruit, we're still in the process, or kind of somewhere in between. And I'm going to wait, I'm going to pause a moment and have a quick drink whilst you all respond. All right. Let me see if I can make that a little bit bigger. Okay, so it looks like a few of you have had to recruit recently. So I'm just going to end that and hopefully share the result. Okay, so a few of you there have had to recruit in the last 6 to 12 months. Yep, some of you are still going through the process. Some of you are finding that in between, oh my goodness, I'm not sure whether we've had, you know, any responses, and some of them have been a bit so-so. I would envisage that it's probably not what you've experienced previously. So thank you for indulging me in that little poll there. I'm just going to stop sharing that and hopefully make that disappear. So excuse the screen grab. I went on Seek a couple of days ago and pulled off some speech pathology adverts. Now, I'm sure you've probably heard of the Great Resignation or quiet quitting. And you may even be experiencing this in your business at the moment. It is absolutely an employees market at the moment. It's reversed, it's flipped on its head. It's no longer an employees market. Employees have employers market. It seems to be employees that have all the power, if you like. Probably not the right terminology, but we at Strawberry Seed have experienced reduced number of applicants for positions across multiple industries. And we found that candidates and applicants are approaching recruitment and finding a new job very differently to what they did maybe 12, 18 months, 2 years ago. So look, this does put employers and businesses in a very tricky position, but I'm going to try and share some tips that our recruitment advisor, Kelly, has given me. One suggestion is to proactively recruit. Recruitment can always be ongoing, not just when someone leaves in a reactionary response. Yes, this might actually impact headcount and overheads, appreciate that. But if you're keeping a continuous eye out for candidates, you're likely to find someone that will be a good fit for your business. If and when you have to advertise, tell potential employees what you have to offer them. Can you offer flexibility? Can you offer a higher than average salary? Are there incentives or ongoing education and training? Let them know who you are as a business, what your values are, and give your business a little bit of street cred or curb appeal, if you like. Tell candidates what's important to you. People want to work for companies that share their values and ethos. And if you are advertising, think how your advert looks. There is a very high percentage, it's got to be in the 70 or 80% of candidates on Seek, for example, who are viewing your advert on a mobile device. So put important information at the top. Get the hook at the top. So people will then click on your advert and read more about it. Another suggestion, add videos or website links to your adverts, add employee or client testimonials, and make your advert as interactive and as engaging as possible. And make it easy for people to apply. People aren't jumping through hoops anymore. Accept video applications, for example, and make it relevant to your field or industry. Hate to use this phrase, but think a little bit outside the box. Where can you advertise? Can you contact local universities or colleges, maybe even schools? Are there any local Facebook groups, or could LinkedIn be of any value to that certain position? It's a changing beast, and we're all experiencing a lot of people and a lot of candidates, a lot of applicants that, ghosting is something that we haven't really experienced before, but are experiencing now. So perseverance whilst recruitment at this point in time is an utmost requirement, and thick skin, I think. Don't take it personally, but keep your eye out all the time, just in case someone pops up. So just really, really quickly, I want to touch on individual flexibility arrangements. What is an IFA? All awards have to include an IFA arrangement clause. An IFA can be used to make alternative arrangements that suit the needs of the employer and the employee, but it cannot be used to reduce or remove an employee's entitlements. So the reason I've brought this up is because we've had a couple of instances where we've worked with speech pathologists who would like an employee to work predominantly through school terms. So they're not required during school holidays. So in that instance, you could potentially enter into an individual flexibility arrangement to stipulate that you will only employ that employee for the gazetted school terms. So that essentially would be an IFA. You do have to make sure that if you are entering into an IFA, that the employee is better off, again, overall, with that IFA than compared without it, or compared to their award or registered agreement. In an IFA, you can vary clauses about the arrangements for when work is performed, such as your working hours, overtime rates, penalty rates, allowances, and leave loadings. Again, I'll stipulate you cannot provide for anything less than what is stipulated in the award or the NES, and essentially with an IFA too. Okay, now leave entitlements. This is always a really good one for employees and employers alike. So I'm going to go through and quickly review the leave entitlements for employees, and this will include annual leave, sick leave, and potential leave during COVID. So we're very lucky in Australia to have annual leave as an entitlement, and this essentially allows someone to be paid whilst having some time off from work. We all need it, we all long for it. So yeah, we're very lucky in this country to have it as a legal obligation. So permanent employees, full-time and part-time, will get 4 weeks of annual leave accrued per annum. That is based on their ordinary hours of work. So it will be prorated if you are part-time. Under the award, there is an annual leave loading component. That is a loading that is applied of 17.5%, and that's applied to the 4 weeks of annual leave per annum. Now, the annual leave loading can be paid in two separate ways and two different ways. It can either be calculated and divided into the salary or the hourly rate and is paid flat rate throughout the year, or it can be paid as an additional payment when someone goes on annual leave. So you would have a little bit of a peak in expenditure, for example, if you didn't include it in the salary. Casual employees are not entitled to paid annual leave, and annual leave is actually an entitlement that is paid out upon termination of employment. Very similar to long service leave. If that is accrued and dependent on state, is eligible to be paid out, that also has to be paid out. Now, the process for requesting annual leave is quite often set out in potentially your contract or your policies. And employers can only refuse, an employee's request for annual leave if the refusal is reasonable. So I'll give you an example there. If you've got 3 employees or 3 practitioners that are already on leave, and you're down to 1 practitioner, it would be fairly reasonable if that person requested annual leave at the same time for it to be declined. It is good to note, though, that employers cannot dictate or direct employees to use their annual leave. It cannot be done under the award, essentially, unless an employee has accumulated an excess or an excessive amount of annual leave, which would be in the Health Professionals Award over 8 weeks. So that is the only instance that it can be negotiated. And again, rules about when and if an employer can direct an employee to take annual leave, as in the excessive leave accrual, is set out in the award. Just as an interesting sidebar or note, annual leave can actually be cashed out under the Health Professionals Award if there's eligibility criteria around it, obviously, and you do have to have some items left. So there is that option under the award also. So leave, personal leave, which is also known as sick and carers leave. This type of leave allows an employee to take time off to help them deal with personal illness, caring responsibilities, and family emergencies. I would suggest, and every case is different, but generally regular medical checkups or appointments are not generally considered as sick leave, as the employee would otherwise be well and fit enough to work at that time. Now, I appreciate over the last few years, sick leave can often be a source of frustration for employers, especially when their employees take what could be considered as a considerable amount of sick leave. Look, we all know people that have never had a sick day in their life, ever. And then we all know people that will be frequently unwell and will pick up any little germ that's walking around. So we have that balance of you know, healthy and susceptible people in our workplaces. What is really important to remember, though, that sick leave is a protected entitlement for obviously permanent employees and is accessible to employees at any time with the relevant evidence. So this might be an occasion of a day or two, and it might include extended periods that may be covered essentially by multiple years of accrued time. It is highly unlikely that you would be able to terminate or performance manage someone or an employee whilst they're on sick leave, whilst they're on paid sick leave. You can manage someone's performance, but not their genuine access to leave entitlements. So employees who need or want to take periods of sick leave should ideally have medical certificates, and these should obviously outline the dates that the employee is unfit for work. Once this is provided, then as an employer, you should genuinely accept it, unless you have reasonable suspicions that the evidence is fraudulent, which obviously we hope not. So all employees, except casuals, are entitled to paid sick and carers leave. Employees may give may give evidence for paid and, oh my goodness, put my teeth in, for paid and sick leave. Permanent employees will accrue 10 days, and again prorated for part-time employees. Leave both types of leave, personal and annual leave, starts accumulating from the employee's first day of work, and again is based on their ordinary hours. Sick leave, however, is not paid out on termination. So if they don't use it, it gets lost essentially. And I did just want to take a moment to clarify, if someone has requested personal leave and it's for not themselves but someone else, which they are entitled to do, the definition of immediate family or household member is someone who is the employee's spouse or former spouse, de facto partner or former de facto partner, their child, parent or grandparent, a grandchild, sibling, or all of the above of their partner or spouse. This definition also includes step relations and adoptive relations. So essentially, if someone comes to you and says, my cousin is unwell and I have to go and care for them, technically they're not immediate family, but obviously that decision would be at your discretion if they wanted to access their paid personal leave. So leave during COVID, we've probably thrashed this one out to death, and I apologise for going over it once again. If the employee is permanent, they will be entitled to sick leave or personal leave if they are unwell with COVID. If they have exhausted paid personal leave, they can access other paid leave, annual leave or long service leave at their discretion, or take leave without pay. Now, there have been provisions under the awards during COVID, which specify unpaid pandemic leave under Schedule X. Now, this is due to expire on the 31st of December this year, and potentially may be extended once again to include that protected leave. It's also good to note during COVID that there may be some eligibility for employees under state or federal discretions or support packages that they potentially can apply for with the relevant authorities. So there may be access to paid leave if they would not usually be entitled or if they've run out. Now, I feel like I've probably gone super duper fast today, but that's okay. Everyone just wants to roll into the weekend, so I'm not going to be sorry. So key takeaways. It's absolutely your responsibility to know what award applies to you and your team. Whilst it is not fun bedtime reading, and I think Carly will agree with me, the awards are not easy to read and they're not fun, particularly unless you like that sort of thing. But it's good to know the nitty-gritty parts of the awards. So obviously we've touched on things like the overtime and penalty rates today, classifications. It's good to have some knowledge of those so that you can apply them to your team and obviously one another. It's always good to proactively recruit for new team members. Keep an eye out, talk, pick people out of the crowd, go to the university open days. Be proactive. You don't have to wait for someone to leave. You don't have to be reactionary. And if you're not ready, it doesn't matter. Create a relationship and approach someone when and if you need. Get inventive and personal, and not in a weird kind of way, but really delve into what you can do around recruitment, retention schemes and strategies. Personalised stuff. Really talk to the people that it involves, and have fun with it, and make sure that people enjoy it and appreciate it. And let's not forget that wonderful thing that leave is a protected entitlement for employees. So obviously, key takeaway would be to review your contracts or your HR documentation, regularly check in on salaries to make sure that you're compliant against the award. And accidentally, if you happen to know a company called Strawberry Sea Consulting, we can absolutely assist with all of that. So please feel free to contact us, and we're more than happy to help you out and go through what you need with your documentation. So like I say, I've probably bolted through that presentation, so it is probably a little bit quick today. I do see that there's one Q&A in there, but I'm going to hand back to Carly just quickly, just to finalise our presentation.
Thank you, Francis. I just want to let everyone know that our next webinar that we have coming up will be in November. And I'm going to be talking about workplace bullying and harassment, some of the frequently asked questions we get in that space, some examples, really relevant, jumping into the Christmas period where we often get a lot of these issues arise. And while I'm going through this, guys, please feel free to throw any questions in that you want us to answer, because we will be doing those in a moment. I'll also mention that our advice videos from previous webinars are on our website. We have done full webinars on leave, we've done full webinars on award increases, we've done full webinars on terminations, and we did one on contractors versus employees as well. So, if we actually had the lovely Tanya join us to talk about contractors. So if that's a topic that you're really interested in, I encourage you to go and have a look at that one. We also have some leadership training and mental health first aid training coming up. So we have previously been to Brisbane and Melbourne, and we've got Perth, Adelaide and Sydney coming up over the next few months. And this is a 6-hour all-day program that's really about getting to the nitty-gritty of managing people and the laws and what you need to understand. So again, next year we will be running more in other states and Melbourne again, but we do have a couple coming up if you're in those locations. And mental health first aid, Francis has some sessions, public sessions for mental health first aid coming up in both October and November as well. And when we send out the recording of this webinar, we'll be including a discount code that you can use to grab a discount on any of those programs. Obviously, our Strawberry Seed clients, particularly our support clients, get a significant discount to access those programs, and they should have already received their codes. But if anyone else is interested, we will include those codes in the follow-up as well. So questions. So I might read through some of the questions we've had come through. Fantastic. So the first one is, if the clinic closes down between Christmas and New Year's, can we direct employees to take annual leave during this time? It's generally considered good that you can do this. You want to give it as much notice as possible. In fact, you'll notice that we're going to start, our next newsletter will come out shortly, and it'll be telling people now's about the time to decide that. So you should be making sure that if you are intending on closing for a period, that you are giving your employees plenty of notice, that you'll be closed for that time, and that it will be compulsory annual leave. At least 8 weeks is considered to be good practice. And if you've got employees that have started in the last quarter of the year, they may not have enough leave, so they will be entitled to have leave without pay. Our next question, can you limit your team to only take leave during school holidays, or do you have to accept leave applications during term time? You can have in your policy that you would prefer people not to take leave during term time and that it is taken in school holidays. However, you can't just have a blanket ban on that, because annual leave can be used for things like family weddings, people. You can't restrict people completely. So whilst you can say it is your preference, you could ask for additional notice for during term periods, for example, in your policies. And it comes back to what is reasonable to knock back. Now, it's reasonable if someone a week before the school holiday says to you, hey, a week before term comes back and says, hey, 3 weeks into term, I want to take a week off. That might be considered unreasonable notice. But if someone's giving you 6-month notice that they want to take a holiday during that time, they're giving you plenty of time to plan for it. So you do need to be careful about knocking it back unless there's a really good reason for it. Next question is, if you give the team the option to use unpaid or annual leave during business closure, is that considered forced leave? No, giving them the option if they want to go unpaid is not if the business is closed, there's 2 different reasons why business closed. Now, a Christmas closure, like over a Christmas period, is considered reasonable. A business closure for other reasons, now it may depend on what the award says in those circumstances. Again, it's about being reasonable. Now, what's different, it would be, say, for example, fire or flood, which is what the stand down leave was originally written for before we had a pandemic. You know, so there are circumstances in which you can ask people to take leave. But that a business closure must be for a particular reason. Now, the other thing is you can consult with your employees as well. So you can consult with employees to say to them, look, we are going to shut down for 3 days to renovate. And if you give them plenty of notice and you let everybody know and you talk to your team and they all agree to it, then that's fine. But you've got to do it in a very consultative way. Do account systems such as Xero automatically calculate annual leave loading? They do if it is set up to do so. It is not the default. So if you do not, if you don't include leave loading in your salaries, which majority of people actually do, particularly in health industries, then you are intending on paying it, then you need to have your Xero set up to do so. I would talk to your bookkeeper and accountant in that instance. Kate, I can include the link to the contractors versus employee webinar in the email that comes out, but as I said, it is available on our website under advisory videos, and their advice videos under the Strawberry Seed website. It's there whenever you like. And in that case, is it reasonable to only allow 1 week at a time during term? Well, again, what is reasonable is going to depend on the circumstances. If someone's wants to head overseas and is giving you 6 months notice that they'd like to take 4 weeks, then that's plenty, that would be considered, it might be considered unreasonable to knock that back unless there's a very specific reason for it. And look, you could say the preference is no more than 1 week during a term. But there are also times where, if someone comes to you and says, hey, my brother's getting married in Fiji and I need to take 2 weeks, it would be, and they're giving you plenty of notice, it would be considered unreasonable to knock that back because, they didn't necessarily choose those dates. So, I mean, I'd love on some of these things for us to give you very, very definitive answers. It is always going to be a case of considering all of the different circumstances that surround each instance. The more notice someone gives you, the more reasonable it would be considered to not knock it back. In the cases that affects business due to importance of consistency of our service, is that reasonable? It is and it isn't. Again, I think if someone gives you 6 month notice that you can plan for so that you've got plenty of time to plan for it, that's very different to someone giving you 2 weeks notice. And it depends on the circumstances. I mean, we've had things like someone whose parent has fallen very ill overseas. And so it's short notice. They've said, can I take leave to go there? Now, it would be incredibly, hard for you to knock that back in that instance. People are allowed to have personal lives. And, the other thing that I would really ask you to consider when you're even considering knocking back leave is that we've talked, it's very apparent that everybody, particularly in your industry, is struggling to hire people at the moment. And so retention is such an important thing to keep people. So if you've got people who are good people and have served you well and hardly ever take leave, and they give you notice that they want to take leave, or they might have a last minute, you need to really consider whether it's something that you can do and how you handle those situations. Because I genuinely, as a parent of a child who does speech pathology, I genuinely understand how important it is to have that consistency. However, your employees are also people, and they also have the right to, I think, they have the right to take leave. And so I really think for the purpose of culture, for the purpose of creating a place that people want to work, offering flexibility within boundaries. So, letting your team know that the more notice that they give, the more likely they are to, because it gives you the time to plan for it. It gives you the time to have someone lined up to take on that work. It gives you the time to make sure that you've got things covered. So I really would be, if you are trying to, influence others to maybe talk about, get them to want to be more flexible, or to want to, you know, provide more flexibility. It can't just be about the bottom line. And if it is just about the bottom line and you treat employees like a cost, they will act like a cost, and they will take all the leave that they can, and they will, you know, it can have unintended consequences. And look, I guess for people that are our ongoing clients, this is what we're here for. This is why we have at Strawberry Seed that we have, you know, team members available. For those that aren't ongoing clients, you're more than welcome to do an initial free consultation, or pay an hourly rate to get some advice. Frances, you want to just jump to the last slide? And also, I would also recommend that, you know, if you don't already follow us on socials, we often share articles and things on different strategies around some of these ideas. Maybe not Twitter. Twitter's probably more me. And you know, if you want to see my rants on things, go for it. But certainly Facebook and LinkedIn, we share a lot of articles on different, you know, ideas and strategies, and also some of the cutting edge stuff, because just because you're a small business doesn't mean you can't be taking into consideration some of the ideas that big business bring to the table. So often we will share articles and ideas that big business is doing, because it can be applicable to small business as well. But I would really emphasize when clients are ringing us at the moment and asking us how to handle some situations, I genuinely am asking the question a lot, but what are the unintended implications if you go down this path? Yes, something might cost you a little bit more money. Yes, it might cost you some inconvenience, but what is the cost if you say no, not just to that employee, but to other employees as well, particularly when other employees might be offering a grass is greener, you know, opportunity somewhere else. And people leave because they're that, you know, they're not happy with something. And if you're, you know, if you say no to them and there's all these other great opportunities out there, well, why wouldn't they go somewhere else where they'll say yes? So it can't always just be about the cost, and it's costs a hell of a lot more to recruit someone new and bring them up to speed. So is there any other questions that anyone would like to ask us at this time? There was a lot of information in there. It is difficult in a you know, one webinar to sort of cover too many topics. We tried to cover as many as possible to at least give everyone a real flavour of what they need to be considering. And we understand that it's complex, and we understand that it's you know, might be something that you know, you find difficult to understand and need time to digest. And one of the things that we try and do is take the, you know, the Fair Work jargon and bring it back to real life. We do try and understand that, you know, whilst the laws may be black and white, the real world isn't always black and white. So, you know, we're always available to chat through any of these things with you. You know, there's no grey area on underpaying someone, but there can be different strategies and maybe things you haven't considered. So sometimes I think the value in reaching out to our team can simply be the fact that we might provide you with some ideas or concepts that you've never considered before. And sometimes we can be quite insular within our own industry, and it's more of the same, and we've always done it this way. But I think if we've learned anything in the last couple of years, that you know, things can change quickly and people can adapt quite quickly, and sometimes being the person that steps out of their comfort zone and tries something a little different can really be the game changer. And if you're, I guess on the leave one too, probably the one last thing I'd say on leave is, if all of your employees are parents, having school holidays off might be exactly what they need. But if you've got employees that are, now that we can travel again, I know, you know, that are young and they don't necessarily want to go and take their holidays during school holidays when all the families are there and the airfares are twice the price. You know, you want to keep it, you want to get graduates and attract them and retain them long term. You know, it's different between your business saying that they can't take leave during school holidays, and another business owner saying, look, as long as you give us at least a term's notice, you know, you can take time off during the term and you can manage that. that could be a difference between someone taking a job and not taking a job. Coming from, I worked in industries where we closed for 3 weeks over Christmas, and it used to always be a real pain for those that didn't want to take 3 weeks of their leave every year over Christmas. They wanted to take it in March or at other times. So in terms of, last question here is recommendations for hiring, reaching out foreign candidates online as we now offer sponsorship. Look, that could be a whole webinar within itself. We do have, and we are not experts on immigration. I'll be really clear on that. It is a very specific expertise required because it changes constantly. So we do have an organisation that we do refer off to in terms of helping around those kind of issues. But you know, we are seeing a lot of our clients consider bringing in people from overseas and actually providing sponsorship because we don't have the workforce. You know, if you're in hospitality, it's pretty easy. My 18-year-old just taken a job in hospitality, and they're literally paying for his RSA and giving him that training on the spot because they can't get enough workers. You can't do that with a speech pathologist. So, you know, there are certain industries that are going to take a while to bring up the, you know, new people coming into the industry, and that's let alone the people who are leaving the industry to go do something different. So it's certainly something that we can provide you some guidance on. We can do some research for you if you're one of our clients, and assist in that area. But also we've got, when it comes to getting into the nitty gritty of it, we do have experts that we refer off to in that instance. Okay, well, it's 8:30, and unless anyone's got any new questions, I'm sure everybody's really keen to, if you're in Victoria and you're lucky like us, you have next a 4-day weekend, or at least just 1 day off tomorrow. But look, we're really happy that we had so much interest in this particular session, and we will be sharing it. Excuse me. We will be sharing that by email to you all. So you'll receive a copy over the next few days, as well as a link to book to the next one if that's something you're interested in. But I'd like to thank Frances for putting together the presentation today. Thank you so much.
Rushing through it.
No, look, I think you did great. And I would like to also thank you all for attending.
Thanks, everyone.